So, I watched a cursed Batman movie, so you wouldn't have to. Now, let me tell you about the Batman movie you should never see. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Taylor Campbell here, and welcome back to Comic Crash, my little show on the internet where we talk about comic books and stuff. And today, the stuff we're talking about is this cursed Batman movie from 1964, but first, a little bit of context. This is Andy Worhol. He was a modernist artist, primarily active in the 60s, and his art is very distinct. His whole deal was something called pop art, which was very influenced by branding and pop culture, or what would become pop culture as soon as pop culture became a thing. Things like cartoons, celebrities, and comic books. And even if you don't know his name, you've seen his artwork. He painted this soup can several times. He screen printed this thing of Marilyn Monroe several times. He ate a hamburger on camera once. Lots of paintings of Coca-Cola. He painted Mao Zedong a lot, and Mickey Mouse. I don't know, from my perspective, he did a lot of painting other people's work and passing it off as his own, but whatever he was doing, he was making a lot of money from it. I do have a friend who likes Andy Warhol, and she said his point was to point out that people, regardless of economic status, can participate in the same ideals, but I can see that point, but I still don't like how he can print out a larger version of a comic book panel and make millions, while the person who originally drew that comic book panel is living off breadcrumbs. Speaking of comics, Warhol apparently liked Batman, and in 1964, Warhol got his camera and a couple of friends to make his own fan film titled Batman Dracula. Now, Batman Dracula was about 2 hours long in its completed form and primarily featured his friend Jack Smith as both Batman and Dracula, and it was filmed primarily on rooftops in New York and Long Beach. Batman Dracula was not approved by DC Comics, and it was made without permission, as I imagine most of Warhol's work was, and so the only place you could find this was in Andy Warhol's studio in New York and a few other showcases where he played it on loop for a while. But apparently this movie was so bad that DC Comics immediately demanded that the movie stop being shown, so only after a few showings the movie disappeared. But in 2006, portions of the movie were shown in a documentary titled Jack Smith and the Destruction of Atlantis. And now we have roughly 36 minutes of the 2-hour trip, and trip is the best way I can describe this movie. Now, a thing to remember about Warhol's filmmaking career is that he was very experimental. He was very concerned about the medium rather than storytelling capabilities. As far as he was concerned, other people were exploring the storytelling part just fine. Some of his movies were big experiments, like his 8-hour-long thriller Empire, which was just a single shot of the Empire State Building that lasted 8 hours long. Or Sleep, which is just some dude sleeping at night. And Batman Dracula has no real plot to speak of. It starts with this beautiful face looking at you and going, "Nee," and doesn't get any more sensical after that. Most of it was basically video experiments with camera placement and editing cuts, or that's what I gather. The only real version that is available of this is a 36-minute cut on YouTube, and even the uploader says that this is just their attempt at pasting the thing together. But ignoring that, I don't think there's enough of any shot to be recut in any way to form a coherent narrative or even part of one. We start the movie on some rooftops, and lots of people are spinning around in capes. Jack Smith, an avant-garde filmmaker and friend of Warhol, is supposedly Batman in this sequence, but he doesn't look anything like Batman, like he's not even trying. But I will point out that this chubby lady here is wearing something that's mask-like, and her cape actually has the Batman cutouts at the bottom. So I think she's actually meant to be Batman. Actually, that's a good note. I watched this monstrosity, and I didn't once see Batman in it. I saw a lot of strange things. There was this lady with an eye patch kissing someone from off screen. This lady kind of looked like a scarecrow just standing on top of the building. And this lady had a bunch of cats, but she was clearly not supposed to be Catwoman. And this same not Batman lady is superimposed on top of various shots. And yeah, outside of that, there are no Batman or even facsimiles of Batman anywhere. This movie is a half hour of some of the strangest, most disconcerting, and most confusing images I think y'all ever see in any movie anywhere. Watching this movie with me was my friend Aimee Homer, a local comic book artist that goes to my comic book club. She's been making art and comics for a very long time, and her current project right now is this webtoons comic called Teal and Pals. It's a fun cartoon lion named Teal and they're pals. It's pretty good. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description for you. Anyway, Aimee and I were watching this movie at the same time and chatting about it, and neither of us could find anything about this movie to be happy about or make any sense of. While art doesn't really have rules, there are certain principles that govern what is pleasing to look at, and it's almost like Andy Worhol was going out of his way to break all of those rules and make probably the most unwatchable movie ever. And we have evidence of that. In 1966, Andy Worhol was talking about his filmmaking experiments with a reporter and said this. He said, "I'm trying to see what else a camera can do. I'm mostly concerned with doing bad camera work. We're trying to make it so bad but doing it well. Where the most important thing is happening, you seem to miss it all the time. Or show you the most scratches on a film or all the dirt you can get on a film so that everyone knows you're doing a film. Fine, Andy, if you want to make a terrible movie, you can. But what was the aftermath of this event?" Rumors abound that some of the subject matter went on to inspire the Batman 66 series with Adam West. While I'm sure someone in Hollywood in the 60s liked both Andy Worhol and worked on the Batman 66 show, I'm certain that this is not the case. I don't see any similarities between the two properties. For one, Batman 66 is coherent and understandable. For another, we have the creation of Batman 66 very well documented, and at no point did anyone mention Warhol's movie. But there is something we can attribute to Worhol, and it's the wave of fan movies that were inspired, not so much by the movie itself, but by the action of the movie being made. Shortly after Warhol's movie, and other fan films started getting made as cameras became more accessible. There was a Filipino Batman and Robin fan film, a Batwoman fan film, Spider-Man got one in 1969. And even today, you can hop online and find hundreds of fan films taking copyrighted properties and making new stories with them. In the beginning, it was a questionable practice, and the discussion of legality over various fan projects still continues to this day. And what of Warhol? This wasn't the last time he'd do a Batman project. In 1966, he did a photo shoot for Esquire magazine, where he dressed as Robin, and Nico, a singer-songwriter that was a friend of his, dressed as Batman in a photo piece meant to celebrate the 1960s and its cultural movements. As for the actual movie itself, Batman Dracula has made it to mythic status. Film historians have been after it for a long time for its importance to underground cinema. Art historians are after it because it's a lost piece of a very famous artist, and comic book historians are after it because of its connection to Batman. So far, it has yet to be fully recovered. But yeah. Now, if you want to watch a movie about Batman throwing down with Dracula, just get the movie Batman vs. Dracula. The animation's really good, and voice acting is cool, and it's based off a forgotten animated series. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go wash my eyes out with buffalo sauce and hope that burns the image of this movie out of my brain. So, until next time, thank you for joining me. Have a great day, and remember to always be your best self.